Have you ever looked at a new release, thought it looked great, but still wondered, is that really all there is? In this video, we're revisiting games with incredible visuals that stood the test of time, aged beautifully, and still put many modern titles to shame.
Middle-earth: Shadow of War. Released in 2017, Shadow of War is a masterclass in scale and dynamic detail that puts many 2026 open worlds to shame. While modern games often feel like static dioramas, the Nemesis system here creates a living, breathing hierarchy that physically and visually changes the world around you. The texture work on the orc captains is phenomenal. You can see individual scars, the grime under their nails, and rusted armor that looks like it has seen centuries of battle. But the real humiliator is the siege engine. Seeing hundreds of unique units on screen, each with individual AI, high-fidelity assets, and physics-based interactions, all without the game turning into a stuttering mess, is a feat that modern developers struggle to replicate even with today's hardware. The lighting in Mordor, from the hellish volcanic glow of Mount Doom to the oppressive icy mists of Saragost, provides a depth of atmosphere that doesn't rely on fake FPS or upscaling to look crisp. It's a game that respects your hardware's raw power, proving that a well-optimized engine from nearly a decade ago can deliver a more dense and reactive warzone than most next-gen titles released this year.
Call of Juarez: Bound in Blood. Techland was light years ahead of the curve in 2009. Bound in Blood delivered a Western atmosphere so thick and visually cohesive that many modern shooters feel sterile by comparison. Using the Chrome Engine 4, the developers implemented a soft, sun-drenched lighting system that perfectly captures the blistering heat of the American frontier. What really humiliates modern games is the heat haze effect and the way dust and debris kick up during a gunfight, creating a layer of grit that feels tangible. The draw distances were massive for the era, showcasing rolling hills and distant mesas with a clarity that modern titles often hide behind aggressive depth of field or fog to save on performance. When you enter a duel, the focus on the leather textures of the holsters, the stitching on the hats, and the glint of sunlight off the revolvers shows a level of material work that is often overlooked today. It's a visual experience that proves art direction and atmospheric lighting beat pure polygon count every single time, making this 2009 gem look more Western than games with 10 times its budget. Midnight Club 3 DUB Edition? If you want to talk about style over everything, you have to revisit Midnight Club 3. Even on hardware from decades ago, Rockstar San Diego managed to create a sense of speed and urban vibe that puts modern racers to shame. The zone effect, a bullet time mechanic that distorts the world around you, is visually more arresting and cleaner than most modern motion blur implementations. The neon reflections on the rain-slicked streets of Detroit and Tokyo created a high-stakes, premium atmosphere that felt alive. While modern racing games often focus on hyper-realistic car models and completely empty, sterile environments, Midnight Club 3 focused on the soul of the city. The customization screens, showing off rims and candy paint jobs with a glossy, high-end sheen, still look more expensive and stylish than many modern menus. It's a loud, vibrant reminder that racing games used to be about attitude and visual flair, not just telemetry data. It humbles modern titles by proving that a strong aesthetic identity is what makes a game age gracefully regardless of the resolution.
Ryse: Son of Rome is the ultimate I can't believe it's this old game. Released in 2013, Ryse still looks better than 90% of the games released in the last 2 years. Crytek used a filmic approach to rendering that bypassed the need for the shimmering upscalers we see today. They applied a sublime anti-aliasing technique that resulted in a movie-like image, free of the pixelated artifacts common in modern DLSS or FSR-heavy titles. The character models of Marius and his legionaries feature skin shaders and subsurface scattering that look photorealistic even on a 2026 monitor. When a Gladius hits a shield, the sparks and the physical denting of the armor are breathtaking. It's a game that didn't use technology as a crutch. It used every ounce of the CryEngine to deliver a benchmark that is still a headache for modern developers to match. The way the Roman sun hits the marble of the Colosseum or the mud of the battlefield creates a level of immersion that most modern AAA games sacrifice in exchange for larger, emptier maps. Ryse remains the king of cinematic fidelity, humiliating the industry by showing that we reached peak realism over a decade ago.
Lisa, I'm coming.
Far Cry 3. In 2012, Far Cry 3 defined the tropical paradise aesthetic, and honestly, it's a bit embarrassing how well it holds up against the over-processed open worlds of today. The Rook Islands weren't just big, they were vibrant and dangerously alive. The way the tropical sun bleeds through the palm fronds using volumetric god rays created a sense of place that many modern sequels have actually lost by becoming too desaturated or realistic. The water technology was a total benchmark at the time, featuring realistic transparency, caustics, and reflections that made the ocean feel like a physical entity you could dive into. But the real humiliator here is the fire. The way fire spreads dynamically through dry grass in Far Cry 3, reacting to wind and consuming everything in its path, is physically more reactive and visually more terrifying than the static, scripted fire effects we see in almost every 2026 open-world game. It was a technical peak for the series that combined high-end shading with a saturated, beautiful art style that still pops on a modern display, proving that 2012 Techland and Ubisoft knew exactly how to make a world feel hot and humid without needing the latest ray tracing hardware to do it.
Splinter Cell Blacklist. Ubisoft Toronto's 2013 stealth masterpiece, Blacklist, is a masterclass in dynamic lighting and shadow engineering. Since the entire gameplay loop is built around the light and shadow mechanic, the engine had to be perfect, and it delivered. The way Sam Fisher's suit reacts to different light sources, the iconic green glow of his goggles reflecting off a wet industrial pipe, or the way his silhouette completely disappears into a dark doorway, is visually stunning and, more importantly, honest. It doesn't use fake lighting to help the player, it uses real-time shadows. The animations are the real kicker here. The killing and motion system flows with a level of smoothness and weight that makes modern character movements feel like clunky, floaty puppets. Every takedown feels heavy, calculated, and earned. While modern stealth games often rely on detected icons and X-ray vision, Blacklist used high-fidelity environmental cues that made the graphics an integral part of the strategy. It's a sharp-looking, polished title that humbles modern releases by proving that 1080p with elite lighting and animation is vastly superior to 4K with flat textures and lazy motion capture.
And those things are bad news if they get too close. Stop them by shooting them.
Binary Domain. This 2012 sci-fi shooter from the legendary Yakuza team features a procedural destruction system that still hasn't been topped by the next-gen shooters of today. When you shoot a robot in Binary Domain, it doesn't just lose a generic health bar, it physically disintegrates. You see chunks of armor flying off, hydraulic fluid leaking, and limbs being blown away. The technical marvel here is that the enemies keep coming. A robot that loses its legs will crawl towards you while sparking and smoking, forcing the engine to handle complex, damage-based pathfinding in real time. It's a visceral, tactical visual experience that makes modern bullet sponge enemies feel incredibly dated and boring. The facial animations were also years ahead of their time, using a nuance-heavy system that allowed for incredibly expressive characters during the game's high-stakes story moments.
While modern shooters focus on flashy, screen-filling particle effects to hide their lack of physics, Binary Domain focused on the art of the break, creating a satisfying, destructive feedback loop that 2026 shooters are still trying and failing to replicate.
Damn, a surveillance spot at 12. Amen.
Let's move out, Artyom.
Metro Exodus. While Metro Exodus is the newest game in this specific block, its 2019 Enhanced Edition set a bar for ray tracing that most games released in 2026 still haven't cleared. It was the first major title to be rebuilt from the ground up with only ray-traced global illumination in mind. The way light bounces inside the cramped compartments of the Aurora train, or how the sun hits the frozen Volga River isn't just a pretty effect, it's a physical simulation of reality. In many modern titles, we see light leaking through walls or weird AI-generated artifacts, but Metro is rock solid. It humbles the entire industry by showing that ray tracing isn't just for shiny puddles or mirrors, it's for grounding every object in the world. When you're in a pitch-black tunnel with only your hand-cranked lighter, the way the tiny flame illuminates the cobwebs in the damp walls is hauntingly real. It remains the gold standard for atmospheric lighting, proving that when a developer commits to a technology instead of using it as a marketing gimmick, the results are absolutely transformative.
Quantum Break, Remedy's 2016 time-bending thriller, is a technical beast that was simply born in the wrong decade. They used temporal reconstruction way before it was a buzzword, allowing them to push film-quality lighting and complex geometry that still looks cutting-edge in 2026. The stutters, those moments where time literally freezes and shatters, are a visual feast that humbles modern particle effects. You'll see thousands of objects, from shards of glass to entire vehicles frozen in midair with realistic light refraction and jagged, broken time textures. The digital actors, based on stars like Sean Ashmore and Lance Reddick, features some of the most realistic skin and eye shaders ever put in a game. You can see the micro capillaries in their eyes and the way light scatters through their skin. Even with its soft, filmic look, the total lack of shimmering and the high-quality object motion blur make it look more expensive and cinematic than most modern action games that rely on sharp, aliased edges. It's a hyper-real aesthetic that proves that when a developer masters the look of a film, the graphics become immortal. Spec Ops: The Line. Spec Ops doesn't humiliate modern games through raw pixel count, but through its incredible sand physics and mastery of environmental storytelling that 2026 developers seem to have forgotten. In 2012, the way sand would dynamically break through windows or bury entire sections of a luxury Dubai hotel was a technical marvel that actually affected gameplay. But the real visual power here is the evolution of trauma. As the story gets darker, the graphics follow. The characters' faces become bloodied and scarred. Their uniforms become tattered and stained with sweat and soot. And the vibrant, gold-plated luxury of Dubai slowly turns into a hellish, sepia-toned nightmare. The use of color as a narrative tool, shifting from bright blues to oppressive oranges and deep reds, is something many modern military shooters, which stick to a safe, realistic gray palette, fail to understand. It's a hauntingly beautiful game that proves visuals should serve the story's descent into madness, making modern, clean shooters look incredibly shallow by comparison. Alpha Protocol. Obsidian's 2010 spy RPG is often unfairly labeled as janky, but its visual logic and branching narrative graphics were decades ahead of their time. While the raw textures show their age, the reactivity of the visuals humbles modern RPGs. Every piece of gear you wear, every scar you earn, and every choice you make is visually reflected in the world and in how characters react to you. The cinematic conversations use a timed system that forces you to read the body language of the NPCs, subtle shifts in their posture or eyes, which was a revolutionary way to handle graphics as gameplay. While modern RPGs often feel like they're on rails with static character models, Alpha Protocol reminds us that the best visuals are the ones that actually acknowledge the player's existence. It's a game where the graphics aren't just a skin, they are a consequence. It puts many of today's choice-based games to shame by proving that immersion comes from a world that visually remembers what you did, rather than just having high-resolution rocks. Dying Light. The original Dying Light from 2015 still possesses a superior atmosphere to almost any open-world horror game released in the last few years, including its own sequel. The lighting during the golden hour as the sun sets over the city of Haran is legendary. The way the long orange shadows stretch across the rooftops and the air fills with a thick, dusty haze creates a sense of dread that is almost palpable. When night falls, it's actually dark, a brave technical choice that most modern games avoid. Dying Light used this true darkness to create a terrifying contrast with your UV flashlight, showing off high-quality light bounce effects that still look incredible. The natural movement animations and the gore system, where you can see the individual layers of bone, muscle, and sinew of the zombies as they break, remain a benchmark for the genre. It's a gritty, technically solid experience that understands how to use contrast and lighting to drive raw, primal fear, making modern horror games look far too bright and safe. Max Payne 3, Rockstar's 2012 shooter, is the undisputed king of animation and physics-driven visuals. Using a highly customized version of the Euphoria engine, Max doesn't just play a preset animation, he physically reacts to the world around him in real time. If you dive into a concrete wall, Max will extend his arm to brace for the impact, and his body will crumple realistically based on the momentum. Modern shooters in 2026 often rely on canned animations that look identical every single time, but Max Payne 3 feels organic and unpredictable. The level of detail here is obsessive. The way sweat progressively soaks through Max's shirt over the course of a level, or how the environment shatters into thousands of physically reactive wood and glass splinters, is a technical standard that many modern developers cut to save on performance. The bullet time isn't just a mechanic, it's a showcase for high-fidelity projectile physics and wound mapping that still puts modern AAA gore systems to shame. It is a visceral, beautiful, and violent masterpiece that humbles the industry by showing that physics are just as important as textures. Red Dead Redemption. The 2010 original Red Dead Redemption has a specific dusty atmospheric charm that even its massive sequel sometimes misses. The lighting in the Great Plains at night, with a single moon illuminating the sagebrush and the distant mesas, is incredibly evocative. But where it truly humiliates modern games is in its horse physics and weight simulation. The way the horses shift their center of gravity during a sharp turn or react to uneven terrain is still better than almost any other game with mounts released in the last decade. Even on hardware that is now ancient, the draw distances and the subtle heat haze over the desert made the world feel infinite and untamed. It's a game that focused on the soul of the American West, using its technical limitations to create a soft, cinematic, painted look that humbles the sharp but soulless and overly sharpened graphics of many modern open worlds. It remains a technical marvel of optimization and art direction. Infamous Second Son. As a launch window title for the PS4 back in 2014, Infamous Second Son still looks like a modern flagship title even by 2026 standards. Sucker Punch's work on particle effects here is legendary. Whether it's the smoke, the neon, or the digital powers, the way thousands of glowing embers or light refracting pixels dance on the screen is a fireworks show for your eyes. The wet pavement of Seattle, reflecting the neon signs of the city with incredible clarity, provided a ray tracing look years before the hardware even supported it natively. The facial animations for Delsin Rowe are still top tier, capturing every smirk, doubt, and subtle eye movement with a level of fidelity that many modern RPGs fail to reach with their procedural systems. It's a vibrant, fast-paced game that proves what happens when a developer masters a specific piece of hardware, rather than relying on generic cross-platform engines. It humiliates the modern era by being a 12-year-old game that still feels like the future.
The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Even before its next-gen updates, The Witcher 3 2015 was a powerhouse of art direction and environmental storytelling. The way the trees sway violently during a Velen storm creates an atmosphere of Slavic dread that is unmatched in the genre. The armor designs are a technical highlight, featuring layered cloth, real-looking leather, and chainmail that reflects light and moves with the character's body in a physically correct way. While modern RPGs often have flat, procedurally generated forests that feel procedural and empty, every corner of The Witcher 3 feels hand-placed and intentional. With a modern 2026 PC, this game can be pushed to look more photorealistic than almost any current year release, thanks to its rock-solid asset base. It's a masterpiece that refuses to age because its beauty is rooted in its atmosphere and world building, making modern, sterile fantasy worlds look like plastic toys by comparison.
Sleeping Dogs. Finally, we have Sleeping Dogs from 2012. This game's depiction of Hong Kong is arguably more atmospheric and alive than most modern open-world cities. When it rains, the city transforms into a neon-soaked dream that rivals the best cyberpunk aesthetics. The reflections on the wet asphalt and the way water beads on Wei Shen's leather jacket were years ahead of the competition. The hand-to-hand combat is cinematic and brutal, utilizing an environmental destruction system that makes the world feel like a weapon. It humbles modern, open-world clones by offering a dense, lived-in city that feels culturally unique rather than a generic North American metropolis. It's a polished, gritty gem that looks and plays with a level of bite and style that games 10 years its junior simply cannot replicate. It is the definition of a game that aged like a fine wine, putting current-gen optimization to absolute shame. Looking back at these 17 titles makes one thing clear. True graphical power isn't just about the latest tech, it's about vision and optimization. These games didn't need AI to fake their resolution, they relied on raw talent and a deep respect for the player's experience. But now, I want to hear from you. Which of these old games do you think still puts modern releases to shame? Is there a title that I missed that still looks like it's from the future? Drop your list in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay legendary.